Hello, and welcome to the second video for the Frogs Consortium. In this video, I'm going to show you the way I typically start a piece of music, and it may not be the way that you think. I think a lot of people, have this idea that composers may just sit around and, look at the stars or look at the sky or, do whatever, or sit down at a piano. I have a piano right over there, which I'll be showing y'all in a later video when we do my office tour. But the way that I start off, I actually start with just a Sketchpad, like literally a piece of paper, or in this case, a digital piece of paper. I am particular to Apple products, so I use an iPad. I mean, obviously, if you use PC stuff, I mean, that's perfectly fine as well. This is just what I like. So I start with my iPad, and I'll start just writing down ideas and kind of getting every idea that I have onto a document, so I can read over it and start kind of thinking over things, and or what I like to call cooking. Like I'm cooking the idea in my head. And so anyway, what I thought we would do here in a moment is literally just show you the page, and I'll kind of walk you through my crazy thought process about this piece. So you'll get to see some of the brainstorming that has gone on, and and kind of where we are with the piece right now. So let's take a look. Okay, so what we are looking at right now is my notepad that I've created for this piece. I'm just going to kind of walk you through it. Please feel free to go back and pause this video at any time so you can take a closer look at this. In fact, I may send a PDF copy of this to your directors just so y'all can kind of have it in hand. Not that it's important, and I do want to emphasize also that all of the ideas that are on the sheet may not make it into the final piece. This is just my chance to brainstorm, and I may end up adding some more ideas to this as I go along. But anyway, this is kind of where my brainstorming process has led me to before I'm actually going to start entering notes into the piece. As you can see, I've got it marked, kind of reminding myself this is going to be a grade 1.5. So if you can see up here, I'll try to point along. This is going to be a grade 1.5. So I want to watch ranges. I want to make sure I am cross-cueing, making sure that we have good confident blocks of sound. And I want to, avoid awkward entrances. So, I want to keep this at that grade 1.5 level. That's more of a note to myself. The style of the piece, as I'm envisioning it right now, it's going to be in the style of a folk dance. But what sets it apart? That's kind of the question. I don't want it to just be a folk dance. I want it to be something special. So these are, sometimes I'll put questions in my notes pads. It's just things I need to keep in mind and be asking myself as I'm moving through a piece. It is going to be in cut time, and in a later video, I'll explain why that will be. Let me scroll this up a little bit. One of the, as I mentioned in the previous video, instrument colors are going to be very important. And and I made a note to myself, this is where most young band music fails. So I wrote down just some ideas you can see through here of different sounds that may or may not be incorporated into the piece. Brass mutes, the frog whirros, of course, trombone glissandi. I'm thinking about possibly including the option for some ambient soundtracks, so like some actual swamp or forest sounds of frogs and, kind of that environment that I think might, again, help make this piece just a little bit more special. In terms of percussion, I'm really thinking strongly with marimba and xylophone and like maybe even wood blocks and temple blocks. I want the piece to use as many natural sounds as possible. And since those instruments are typically either made of wood or sound wooden, I think that will help with the kind of naturalness that we want to bring about, since this is a piece about frogs. Also thinking about maybe some African drums or shakers, again, just that natural sound. One thing I'm dying to do is this whip crack, so it's going to be like the frog's tongue, snatching flies out of the air. And for the flies themselves, I'm thinking of trills and mouthpiece buzzes to be the flies. But the thing that I'm a little worried about is I want this to be a serious concert piece, serious in the sense that it is musically worthwhile. I do not want it to come off as a novelty piece at all. So again, you see one of my questions that I ask myself here, how to keep it from sounding gimmicky. So that's something that, that's a fine line I'm going to have to balance as if I incorporate that effect. I'm not totally sold on it. I would like to. Right now I'm thinking about incorporating it at the very end. but you know, we will see, because I do want this to be a really genuinely good concert piece for young and developing bands. All right, so moving along. Some moments that I'm thinking of with the piece right now. Like I said, the frogs catching flies. Rainstorm. I think I'm going to incorporate some rain sounds into this piece because I remember my grandma would always say, you know, when we'd hear the frogs croak. I live out in the country, by the way. When the frogs would be croaking and doing that, they would say they were singing for the rain. And so I thought it might be nice to have this kind of, you know, coincide with, you know, like a rainstorm going through. So this is what's bringing the frogs out to do their celebration. So that's kind of an idea that's developed even since this morning. So I want to make sure the frog whirros are clearly heard, so we might have some moments where everything else drops away except for a soft fermata. But since those are going to be kind of a specialty instrument, I'll have to be careful with my orchestration to make sure they can be heard, and perhaps even seen. You know, that's something else I've thought about, is making whoever plays those parts, you know, be staged close to the front, because the instruments just look cool. Thinking about it, either an accelerando or some type of sudden tempo change at the end just to increase the excitement. And then I also, when I was thinking of, like, you know, everything I want to do with this piece, I thought of bullfrogs, having a bullfrog moment. And that's because I want to be sure to give the low voices, you know, the low reeds, the tubas, the trombones, euphoniums. I want to be sure that they get a melodic moment, because in my opinion, in a lot of young band music, those instruments get ignored, or they're just playing completely background parts all of the time. Don't get me wrong, you have to some of the time, but I think if we're going to develop musicians, we need to give everybody a chance to have those shining moments of melody. And so I'm going to make sure to have a moment in the piece where that will be the case for those instruments. Some other ideas as I was thinking about the piece. I want to write a melody that uses a lot of leaps. And in fact, hang on just a second. Okay, well, no, that's not working right now. But in the next video, we'll talk about, you know, the actual motivic and melodic fragments that I'm using to create the piece. But I think I want to do some melodies with leaps, because a lot of young band music only uses by step. You know, so the trick will be to make sure that it's challenging but not unachievable. And I want to use that because, again, also, you know, the whole thing, like with frogs leaping, it's going to sound like frogs hopping around. Below that, you'll see I've got Granger moments, chromaticisms, unusual harmony, and dramatic dance moments. And then finally, the structure of the piece. As I was thinking about all these ideas and how they might logically flow, you can see the intro. Right now I'm thinking we'll have a few frogs hopping and fermatas, so we can hear the thunderstorms and the frog whirro. Then we'll go into the main dance melody as the frog celebration begins. Where it says chorus, that's really just the second theme, but it's just going to be a bigger, more tooty sound, you know, everybody playing at once, which I'm going to try to avoid doing all the time, because I don't want it to sound just monotonous. I don't want to just have the same color palette all the way through. But we will have those big moments like that to really, you know, let the band shine. Going to bring the dance melody back, but with variations and more Granger-esque decoration. Then the plan is to move into the bullfrog section with the low brass. Then we may have a moment where we pause briefly to hear the thunder increase and hear more frog whirros. And then we're going to bring dance one back, but slightly faster, pushing into the finale and coda and a big build, and that's where maybe the frog will catch a fly, and then we'll have the final statement. And of course, you know, just because I drew a frog over there. So that's kind of where my brainstorming with the piece is right now. So I've got a lot of ideas, and I've been singing some melodies and, you know, thinking things to myself all throughout the day, and we'll just see how it goes. So there you have it. That's how I begin a piece. Now, again, you know, I like to emphasize my process might be different from another composer's process. Like, you know, the way that I write might be different from the way that John Mackey writes or that Julie Giroux writes. But that's what makes each of us unique in kind of our process. So for all of you out there that might be budding composers, feel free to borrow or, you know, steal any of the process that I use and that you find helpful in this, but don't take this as the way to write. This is just the way that I write. So I hope you found this informative and interesting. I'm really excited to get started on the actual notes and rhythms today. So we'll see how it goes, and I should have another update very soon. And as always, peace, love, and music.